style of curriculum where we believe some of our curriculum designs have been patterned from. We start with Israel. We cannot actually take all having 7 continents. So what I did was actually to accumulate some major cities in Africa, in US, in Europe, in Australia, more or less, and Asia. Sa Asia, we differ by countries. And we will know that the Philippines is different from Vietnam and Korea, Japan or China. Okay, shall we start? Sino yun? Si April Rose. If you can make
Okay
it,
po, Doc.
kailangan naman na April. Yung reporting should be different from college style. Kasi ang college style, sanay naman kayo sa college na binabasa into verbatimly. But I believe that you have, since you're taking masters, I would suggest that if you flash slide, maybe you can just make a synopsis of every slide so that we can actually minimize time, because what's important is that we can make an interaction for every country that we study. So yun ang suggestion ko, no? So you don't have to read it. Say something about the slide, which all of us mababasa naman natin. Then from there, I would suggest everyone to make an observation, because we will try to make comparison sa lahat ng inyong ma-report. In comparison with the Philippines, I think number 13, yung sa Philippines, and I said na it was not individually assigned but to all, because when you deliver or report on a specific country, you make a little comparison with the Philippines in relation to your report. You don't have to compare lahat sa Philippines. Depende lang dun sa iyong na-report, which doon sa iyong na-report, saan doon papasok yung Pilipinas at ano ang kaibahan ng Pilipinas doon sa kanila. At ano naman yung mga something like significantly beneficial na pwede sana nating magamit dito sa Philippines. And ano na yung hindi kinakailangan. Because we found out dito sa Pilipinas kasi we have graduates na they're not even fitted. Kaya pag-graduate nila, they cannot find a job. And when they found a job, irrelevant naman dun sa course nila or sa degree. Just like kanina yung klase ko, yung isang estudyante ko nagsabi, ako ma'am, nag-graduate ko og agriculture. So ano yung gawa mo? Teacher sa Pilipino. See? Nakita ko gano'n. So she was forced to take Master in Filipino now. Dahil sa kanilang area, even if ayaw sana niya, lahat ng mga teachers sa area niya, meron ng masters, may master sa English, may history, may lahat-lahat. So practically every one of them doon ayaw mag-handle ng Filipino kasi hindi naman doon na master. That's why because of the circumstance, mag-master na lang siya ng Pilipino para na i-handle ng Pilipino. So tingnan natin yung Israel. Ano difference? Okay, April, your turn. Ay, mute ka, darling. Hindi ko marinig.
For a while, Doc. Good afternoon, Doc. Good afternoon, classmates. I'm April Rose Anchata, and my topic is about curriculum development in African countries. Maklaro ba ninyo ang slides?
Sandali, bakit African countries yung sa'yo?
African countries yung akin, Doc.
Sino na-assign sa harnessing potential? Madali ha.
Okay po, Doc.
O hindi ka pwede nun kasi malayo ka pa.
Okay
Africa
po.
mo na una? Ano na una dyan sa inyo? Listahan.
African
African countries po.
Ay, sumali ang akong record pala dito. Okay. Sige, go.
Okay po, Doc. Curriculum development in African countries. First, let us know what is curriculum development. Curriculum development is defined as planned, purposeful, progressive, and systematic process to create positive improvements in the educational system. Every time there are changes or developments happening around the world, the school curricula are affected. There is a need to update them to address the society's needs. So in African countries, Africa is the second largest continent in the world, and before, in Africa, 72 million children are not attending school. They are too busy working at home to be able to go to school. Other reasons children are deprived of education are gender issues.
Excuse me.
Yes po, Doc.
Your slides are not moving. We are telling something
po,
about
Doc.
slide one.
Okay po, Doc.
I want to
Religion,
see
war,
your
and
face
health.
when you report. I want to see your face when you report.
Hindi ako makita, Doc.
Hindi ko makita.
Wait lang po, Doc, ha.
Si Iris lang nakikita ko.
Tingnan ko po, wait lang. Oh my.
Meron akong change, ha?
Ay, Doc, sabi po dito, you can't use your camera while sharing your
100.
screen.
150
Okay.
ha? Thank you. Pagpunta lang ako sa SM.
Cellphone po yung gamit ko, Doc.
Sige.
Ala, oy. Ala, pasensya po.
It's okay. Asa yung Iris? Ano ginagamit mo?
Laptop po.
Kasi I want to see your report, your reporting with your face.
History of education. Let us know the history of education in Africa. First, they have traditional African education. Traditional African education is an education wherein it is a form of apprenticeship, a form of informal education where children and or younger members of each household most learn from elder members of their tribe, households, and community. So dito po sa traditional African education, their parents would be their teacher. They are taught on how to do the household chores and other important things in line with survival. Kasi itong traditional African education is more on survival po ito. Tapos itong missionary education. Missionary education, it is the colonial period. The first school implanted in Africa were those of the missionaries and represented a veritable subsystem of foreign education. So dito po sa missionary education, they aim at training an indigenous elite, spreading the Christian religion, and in general, promoting the process of colonization. Then sumunod naman po ang Bantu education. Dito po sa Bantu education, it was an apartheid system of education. Dito po sa Bantu education, ito po yung picture of racial discrimination where black students are given less opportunity in education kumpara po sa mga white students. Bali dito po, mataas ang pagtingin sa mga white at mababa naman ang pagtingin sa mga blacks.
Move your slide.
Post-colonial education. Sa post-colonial education, it ensures inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So, dito sa post-colonial education, dahan-dahan na nagsimula equal education for all. Now, let us know the curriculum before in Africa.
Excuse me,
In
move your
1995,
slides.
ay, wala rin na move, sorry po. Curriculum, let us know the curriculum before in Africa. white paper on education and training. It was on 1995. The white paper describes the first steps in policy formation by the Ministry of Education in the Government of National Unity. It locates education and training within the National Reconstruction and Development Program and outlines the new priorities, values, and principles for the education and training system. And in 1996, the African Schools Act. In the African Schools Act, education progressively available and accessible against anyone on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, language, or birth. And the next one is the Further Education and Training Colleges Act in 2006. A Further Education and Training, or FET, institute refers to the education and training that is provided from grade 10 to grade 12. This FET education and training also includes career-oriented education and training offered in technical colleges, community colleges, and private colleges. No-fee school policy. The no-fee school policy may not charge mandatory school fees, so that basic education is available and accessible to the poor learners. In financial terms, abolition of school fees minimizes the schooling costs and brings about easy access to primary schooling. Human Resource Development Strategy in 2009. The purpose of this human resource development strategy is to provide a plan to ensure that people are equipped to participate fully in society, to be able to find or create work and to benefit fairly from it. And the last one is to, and the next one is 2009, government strategic priorities. So government strategic priorities, education and skills forms one of the 10 key priorities in the strategic agenda of the government. The next one is the national curriculum. In the national curriculum, it infused indigenous knowledge system kung saan they recognize that there is a body of knowledge embedded in African philosophical thinking and social practices in order to make sense of the world and bringing as many perspectives as possible to assist in problem solving in all fields. So dito papasok yung social justice and equity. So pagdating sa national curriculum, meron na silang social justice and equity, which means a commitment to ensure that all students have access to schooling and basic nutrition. So they are not just concerned with the schooling of the students, but also with the health of the students. Then values in education intended to help young people achieve higher level of moral judgment that can emerge only from a balanced exposure to humanities and scientists. So values and education, dito matututo yung estudyante. Matututo siya ng mga ano yung tamang values. Tsaka yung humanity, kung paano maging makatao. Dahil lahat nga ng tao ay hindi makatao. So dito, kaya kailangan merong values and education na curriculum. So dito po sa national curriculum, learners are required to have extensive reading and extended writing skill, strong conceptual knowledge, ability to apply knowledge in a variety of situations, critical and constructive thinking, awareness of social, moral, economic, and ethical issues. So dito po sa national curriculum, makikita natin kung paano nag-improve yung curriculum nila, paano kung tumaas yung standards ng kanilang curriculum. At dito naman sa digital age literacy, effective communication. Africa's education and training system is reoriented to meet the following skills. So dito po sa digital age literacy, effective common communication, ano na po sila dito sa technology, inline na po sila sa technology. Meron na po silang skills So dito po, kailangan po, meron sila nitong following skills. Digital age literacy, kung saan tinuturuan na sila, gumagamit na sila ng internet, na computers, laptops. Tapos meron dito mga skills na kailangan nila like basic, scientific, economic, ICT, and technological literacies. Visual and information literacies, multicultural literacy and global awareness, effective communication, teamwork, collaboration, interpersonal skills, personal, social, and civic responsibility, interactive communication, and etc. So napakadami pong nag-improve pagdating sa katagalan pagdating po sa curriculum nila. So makikita natin yung improvement po. So lalo na dito sa digital age literacy, kung saan mas yung curriculum po dito sa Africa is ano na po siya, yung standard niya po is pwede na po ipantapat sa standard ng ibang countries. Kumbaga globally competitive. Parang ang purpose po nitong curriculum na ito is para maging globally competitive yung mga students po nila. So, curriculum development in the Philippines. So, curriculum development in the Philippines, ang pinakauna po, pre-Spanish curriculum. Sa Philippines, meron po tayong pre-Spanish curriculum. Itong curriculum na po ito is unsystematic, unplanned, and hindi siya spontaneous. Unplanned siya and spontaneous po pala. Tapos, dito po sa pre-Spanish curriculum, it is informal education that is in line with survival din po. The Spanish devised curriculum, naman, isa sa curriculum development in the Philippines. Ito po yung Spanish curriculum was more on religion rather than basic literate skills, science, and art. So, more on religion po dito sa Spanish devised curriculum. Nandito po, inline po ito yung education nila sa religion, writing, and reading. Then sa American devised curriculum, the curriculum that is organized.
Don't mention about American, okay? Don't about. May ibang mag-work dyan. Ang point
okay
ko lang
po.
is ito. Are you through?
Sige po. Not yet, Doc. Malapit na po, Doc. Pwede po i-touch ko lang sandali sila.
Ano mo na lang, pagkatapos niyan, kasi you mentioned about the Philippines in line with the pre-Spanish curriculum. Pre-Spanish
okay
and
po.
Spanish, no? Okay.
Apo. Sige po. So, i-mention ko lang, curriculum during liberation period. So, meron tayong curriculum during liberation period. Meron tayong curriculum during Philippine Republic. Kung saan yung sa Philippine Republic is more on preservation of our culture and heritage naman tayo dito. Tapos, curriculum in new society po, ito po yung, as the Philippines continue to witness the result of all underpinning research and happening internationally and locally, a more developed and globally competitive curriculum would naturally make itself. The implementation of K-12 is one of the products of the need to compete with international standards. Comparative analysis. The way colonial education was structured and operated in Africa, where settler population lacked a similar incentive or desire to provide education to the non-white population, and rural missionaries played a primary role in education provision. These dynamics vary between forms of colonial rule in the Philippines, where Spanish and American control led to the creation of two notably different education systems, driven by different logics and objectives. What is same in both countries is that colonial rule transformed their education in line with the specific colonial ideologies and interests. These changes in turn shape their education system and continue to have an impact on how education is structured and understood. Understanding colonial legacies in education allows for an understanding of these ideologies and interests, just as, conversely, appreciating these ideologies and interests allows for new insights into education and the historical dynamics that shape it. Thank you for listening.
Okay, stay put there. April, based on your report, how would you compare the content of the African curriculum with the Philippines? If you make a synoptic presentation?
I would compare the curriculum of Africa to our curriculum here in the Philippines. Um,
Based on the content of the curriculum.
Based on the content of curriculum.
Yes.
Sa ano po, Doc, sa curriculum po ng ano po, ng Africa, bale, um, meron po silang ano, Doc, meron po silang uh, primary education, secondary
Yes. Level
education,
yan. Level yan.
a level.
Content. Level, we discuss it as second area ng ating discussion.
Okay po, okay po.
Ano yung naging, sa tingin mo lang, based on you on your analysis, ano ang major content ng kanilang curriculum compared sa Philippines? Israel. Anybody from the group? Lifeline. Based on your observations. Sige, mag-anap tayo.
Hello,
Just
Doc.
5 minutes na interaction lang para makita natin. Kasi we're trying to study ngayon different countries vis-a-vis Philippines. Ano nakita niyong content doon na naiiba sa atin? Everybody? Hey! Wala kayo nakita? May I suggest that when somebody reports, be observant kasi ang atin is we're trying to make an analysis, no? Wala kayo napansin doon? Hangtod sa development niya. They did not mention about degrees. Wala silang programs. And if you look at the presentation, of course, unless of course na hindi nasali sa report. Based on the reports na yun. The curriculum
Doc,
was born out of any. Yes, Maita?
based on the report, parang merong similarities in our histories in terms of the education. Example, pre-colonial, everything is yung parang passed down by the older people of the village to the younger people of the village. And we didn't have anything formal until the church, or in their case, missionaries came. Di ba sa atin, ganun din. When the Spanish came, our educators were all church. Church talaga. It's not quite secular, non-sectariat eh. Ano talaga siya eh, church. So I think, kind of like us, dun din yung start nila. The church came in.
But what was the content of the church work? It was different from the Philippines.
Yun lang. Of course,
Oo, diba?
depends on the sect of the church. Yun yung kanilang focus.
Oo, yun namin na yung content niya ba? Content niya. Even if it started from the home, it started from the mission. Sa atin sa Pilipinas, we started from religion. Based on history. But I'm more concerned of the focus as it developed. Anybody? Until now, I was expecting na mapapresent mong baka hindi talaga nag-exist, no? Based on April's report. There was no formal program yet. Ano nakita niyo dun? Kasi
They
yung
are
kanilang...
just Doc. They are
Yes?
just focusing on practical approach.
Yes, I think
Meaning
so.
real life situation,
Oo.
how to be independent in their life as they grow, yung mga bata.
That's a good observation, Ruby. In fact, if you look at the report, kasi report ang binabasehan, that's why when you are assigned to a specific topic, see to it na alam, no? Based on the report, nakita natin na they focus more on skills development. Right? Tingnan mo ito, sa digital, puro skills. Even yung mga programs nila, yung mga simple programs, puro skills. All the skills. So, sabi mo kanina, survival, which is true. In other words, kung titingnan natin yung African African countries na curriculum. Hopefully, they have improved. They will survive. Whereas in the Philippines, from the beginning na they were kinder until mag-college, we are bombarded with what? Too many
Curriculum
academic
nonsense,
subjects.
not real.
Yes?
In the Philippines, Doc, we are following the uh, what do you call this curriculum guide competencies.
Do you think African curricularists went to the grassroots, visited the grassroots, and find out what they really needed rather than come up with academic layout without consulting the grassroots and whether this curriculum will really address the issues and needs of the people down there? Look at your modules ngayon. Do you think the curricularists who actually devised these modular lessons, they understood the very need of those who are in the far-flung barangays or even in the suburbs and in the cities who hardly can't answer the modules? Curriculum yan. So that could be one of, and wala silang, puro act pa lang sila. Nakita nyo? Until 2006 ba ito? Puro mga act siya. So wala pa naging turn into law. Based on your report, until 2009. Ang 2009 is strategy. And ang government, noong 2009, mga priorities. So when we say strategic priorities, hindi pa talaga siya na-formalized. I would like to know, ano yung TICA priorities ng strategic agenda of the government? Do you have that?
20 priorities po.
Oo. Ano yun? Meron ba? Wala mo na-present, no?
Hindi ko po na-present, Doc.
Dapat yun din. Part yun sa, kaya you mentioned about 2009 government strategic priorities. So para nalaman natin ano talaga priority nila sa kanilang mga agenda. So this is one natin. Unless of course you have other observations na hindi natin nakita. The big difference is that they will survive longer whether kahit saan sila pupunta. Kasi life skills ang kanila. Sa atin, marami tayong graduates ngayon na degree holders pero jobless because they were not prepared for life. But they are bombarded with too many academics. So, ang kanilang mga utak punong-puno ng memories. Pero yung memories natin doon, naka-stress yun. Kasi we cannot actualize it for them to survive later. Kaya nga ang iba, pag graduate nila, wala silang mapuntahan. O magtinda na lang dyan sa labas. Self-employed. If they have the capital, what about if they don't have? So kaya ang ibang skill, alam mo yung nakita nating skills ngayon? Mag-caregiver. Graduate ng high school, mag-caregiver na lang because they can earn. That is a skill. Housekeeping. Kaya mas nakita ng ating sector ngayon na livable pala. Livable kung skills. Or that is one observation. Let's proceed to the next.
Thank you, Doc.
Sinong sunod? Class, I would like you to be very observant because that's the purpose why we tried to look into the curriculum of other countries. Why do they survive? Israel is a very, very small nation, yet no one can defeat. Iris, okay. Iris, yours is European. O, ito natin dito.
Yes, Doc. Good afternoon, classmates. Good afternoon, Doc. My topic for this afternoon is about the curriculum development in European countries. And since what I understand in our task is to present the curriculum development in the different countries, right? So what I did in my report is I selected 5 countries in Europe to present their curriculum development.
Excuse me, before you proceed, yung bang 5 European countries mo, representatives ba siya ng city, ng suburbs, at saka far-flung barangays, far-flung areas?
Doc, ang pinili ko, Doc, I'm not really sure about this, Doc, ha? Pinili ko po United Kingdom, Great Britain, may Ukraine po ako, Germany,
Puro
and
mga ano yan.
Netherlands, yes.
Puro mga talagang major cities. Sige lang.
Kasi Doc, hinanap ko yung iba, nahihirapan kasi ako makahanap ng mga ano nila, yung mga ano talaga, yung in-depth na discussion. Kaya naghanap na lang ako yung available sa internet.
Poland, ano pa ba dyan? Sige lang, okay lang. Go ahead.
Okay, Doc. So, let's start with the curriculum development in United Kingdom. Okay, so according to my readings, that the curriculum development in United Kingdom is really connected or really dependent on the politics and the cultural milieu of the times. So meaning parang development of their curriculum is ano po, Doc, kino-consider po nila ang kanilang culture. Yung parang ganun talaga ang kanilang ginagawa. So every time there's a development or may pagbabago sa kanilang curriculum, it has to do with their culture. Okay, so, and in this changes po, in the development of their curriculum, there is always a legislation na dinadaan po sa law. And ang problema lang po is medyo minimum yung consultation. And wala masyadong research. Yung sinabi mo kanina, Doc, na sa grassroots siguro, and teacher involvement. So more on, kasi tinitingnan lang nila yung anong impact nun sa kanilang culture. Then, there are actually two triadic relationship in creating their curriculum. And these are the learning experience and the partnership. Ito ang kanilang binabasihan in creating their curriculum. So when you say learning experience, so we have first the curriculum, what is being taught, then pedagogy, how it is being taught, and also how these are being assessed. So yan po ang tinitingnan nila sa first triad. And then the next is the partnership. So the government, may dinadownload silang information sa local education, ano yun? Local education, nakalimutan ko yung meaning niya. Authorities, LEAs. Yung LEAs po, and then with the partnership of the schools, kaya nakakabuo sila ng pagbabago or development sa kanilang curriculum. So it is stated here that these two triads affect each other in order to create, or they have to work together in order to create curriculum. And then this is the trend of the UK education from 1944 to 2008. I'm not sure kung malinaw po, Doc.
Hindi nga masyado.
Screenshot lang kasi.
Kaya malapit yung mata ko eh.
Anyway, Doc, bigay ko naman po sa inyo ito. Okay, so from the curriculum from 1944 to 1980, the subject matter suggested centrally but refined locally and largely decided by schools and teachers. Yun po yung sa 1944 to 1980. And in 2008, subject matter decided and controlled by the central government, and its delivery policed by school inspections. Mm-hmm. So before, galing yung subject matter sa central government, or kung sa dito is central office, ang tinatawag dito sa Pilipinas central office, then pinapadala sa mga schools, and then and pinipilian ng mga schools and teachers kung ang kanila bang ituturo. Okay? And then in the 2008, may pagbabago na because it is decided by the central government. So meaning may prepared na silang curriculum downloaded to the schools, and then may monitoring and evaluation nang nangyayari. Okay. Then for the assessment, the system limited to examinations at school leaving ages. So yung may assessment sa end na po ng parang siguro high school, mga ganun, exit exam, parang ganun. And controlled by the examination boards with substantial involvement of the teachers. Then in 2008, centrally controlled examinations and testing systems administered by examination boards with national testing at preschool, 7, 11, 14, 16, 17, and 18, and minimal involvement of teachers. Actually, nangyayari din po ito sa Pilipinas. Yung parang national achievement test. At may tinatawag din sa senior high school yung parang exit. Hindi ko nang masyado yung basta assessment po siya sa senior high school na tinitingnan kung ano ba talaga ang mga na-learn, no? Mga competencies na nakuha ng mga estudyante. Or are they ready for the next stage? Kung hindi naman, anong kulang? Just to check, no? For the improvement of the curriculum. Next, we have the pedagogy. Teaching methods, distribution of teaching time, lesson sequences, and detailed approaches left to teachers to decide. So pedagogy is, ang teachers na pang magde-decide, ano bang gagamitin ko dito, no, in this subject. But in 2008, methods, organization, lesson sequences, and precise methods, though not statutory, all heavily promoted by the government strategies. So pre-planned, pre-made, ang gagawin lang is sundin na lang siya. Training programs and publications and monitored through school inspections. May lang din talaga, may monitoring and evaluation. Okay, so that is for the United Kingdom. Now let's go to the Great Britain. The British curriculum is also known as the National Curriculum of England. Tiningnan ko kasi, Doc, anong kaibahan ng Great Britain sa UK? Kasi parang kasi sinasabi na parang interchange yan silang dalawa. Nabasa ko na ang United Kingdom is composed of 4 countries, the England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And for the Great Britain, ito naman siya yung minus ng Northern Ireland. So yung composition ng Great Britain is England, Wales, and Scotland. So for those 3 countries po, they have this. The curriculum is focused more on creativity, critical thinking, and flexibility. Okay, so it also has a series of measurable and achievable goals, each designed to build on what is to prepare the students for future work. So may mga goals silang tina-target in this curriculum. Okay, so the school curriculum, all learning and other experiences that each school plans for its pupils. And the national curriculum forms one part of the school curriculum. Medyo na-confuse po ako dito, pero sa aking pagkakaintindi, ang school curriculum, kung ano yung iba-iba kasi ang mga schools. May mga, for example, in the Philippines, may science high school, may mga vocational school, may mga mga trade school, and lately lang nung nagkaroon ng K-12 na parang na-define yung may high school na may specializations na po. Specializations na yung parang tina-target, for example, may STEM, may ACAD, may ABM, mga ganun po. So, ang pagkakaintindi ko po dito is ang national curriculum is yung galing talaga sa central office. And then, yung mga school, kasi iba-iba naman yung ino-offer nila, dito po pumapasok yung school curriculum. Kung ano pong parang tailor-made para sa kanila, kung ano ang talaga ang kanilang ino-offer. And I think nangyayari din po ito sa mga parang yung mga private school kasi at sa public school magkaiba magkaiba yung mga in-offer nila. Although in the Philippines, we have the Department of Education, may K-12 curriculum tayo, but the private schools, they have the freedom to add subjects or mga activities or programs na bumabagay or ano yung tinatawag, parang may principle ba sila, or for example, the Catholic schools, nag-a-add sila ng mga religious na mga subjects, mga ganun po. That's my own understanding in this school curriculum and national curriculum po.
Don't you worry about, sandali lang, no? May ano ako, ba't nakadali? Don't you worry about curriculum per se, okay? Kasi we'll discuss that in later time. I only would like you to get familiar with the different focuses on curriculum designing and development of other countries para it would be easier for you to understand when we talk about what is curriculum per se and what are the different types of curriculum that we are all teachers are engaged in. Yun ang ano doon. So never mind,
Yes, Doc.
mag-worry about that. We will be discussing. Anyway,
Lumalabas kasi, Doc, sa research po.
mag-alala na, we will discuss. You will find out na, yun pala ang curriculum. Hindi ko muna sabihin. Para bang thrilling. Pero I would like to mention muna na ang top 10 poorest countries in Europe are Ukraine, Georgia, Kosovo, Moldova, Albania, North Macedonia, Bosnia, Belarus, Serbia, and Montenegro. Ito yung mga considered poorest based on per capita income, kumbaga. Ganon.
Okay.
Pero,
masaling isa, Doc.
Oo, per capita, yun. Ibig sabihin, income. Pero, so, yun ang gino-consider nila so far based on US dollars, kumbaga, pag-uusapan by 2020. Anyway, just to keep you motivated on your reports. Do not be worried about ano ba talaga yung curriculum nila. Pag-aaralan natin yan later. Huwag ka mag-wala.
Yes, Doc. Hindi ko na lang muna, baka iba yung pagkaintindi ko.
Kasi mostly yung presentation dyan, puro yan kan eh. Written curriculum yan, nakikita ko eh.
Yes po.
Okay.
Okay po. Okay, so the national curriculum provides pupils with introduction of the essential knowledge that they need to be educated citizens. So it introduces pupils to the best that has been taught and said and helps engender an appreciation of human creativity and achievement. I will not explain further about the national curriculum. So anyway, for the Great Britain, it is a globally recognized system. May nabasa po ako na if you want your child, for example, if you have some plans of going to another country, mas mabuti daw po kapag nagpaaral ka sa international school, yung may Great Britain na curriculum. Kasi mas madali daw pong i-adapt. Anyway, I don't know how true is that because it could be an advertisement, promoting their school. But what they are trying to say is that it is a globally recognized system. So pag may country na may British na curriculum, so mas madali ang pag-transfer ng bata. If ever
So, i-try mo i-compare ang Great Britain, US o Ateneo. Kumpara ba sila? Ateneo, LaSalle, UP, ganon.
Yes, no. Okay. So it focuses on both the breadth and the depth. So meaning, ang curriculum nila, yung lalim at ang lapad niya is parang encompassing, Maraming involved na mga subject matters. Siguro because it wants to be accepted, Kung saan man na country na pwedeng may British system, so hindi mahirapan na makapag-aral ang bata. Well-defined key stages provide clear understanding of the progress. So may mga key stages sila, yung mga grade kinder 1, kinder 2, yung mga ganun, mga hanggang sa senior. School encourages growth beyond the classroom. So meaning, they are preparing the learners to work, Parang parang K to 12. Negosyo, trabaho, at higher education. So beyond the classroom, yung siguro yung mga subjects dun ay life skills, no? Tinuturuan sila ng life skills. Now let's talk about the curriculum development in Ukraine. So Ukraine has a long tradition. Education system has a long tradition. But sa sinabi na nga ni Doc na it is one of the poorest country in Europe, so its reputation has suffered from increased quality problems. So may problema sila sa quality ng kanilang education because it was a former part of the Soviet Union. And maraming nangyari na social transformation after the collapse of communism. And they believe that ang academic institutions are inflexible. Parang hindi sila open for changes. Then, ang kanilang mga tinuturo ay hindi siya in demand sa labor market. And then, meron silang unhealthy obsession of theoretical university education. Parang more on focus sila sa theories, wala masyado sa application or yung mga kailangan talaga para mabuhay, no? Para magkaroon ng trabaho. And every school has a core curriculum and a school curriculum. So siguro later. But anyway, ang core curriculum na sinasabi dito, yung Ukrainian literature, mathematics, physics, chemistry, geography, world literature, foreign language, and others. Siguro ito yung mga core subjects, no? From basic going to college, siguro kailangan may ganito na subjects.
Meron tayo niyan.
Yes po.
Meron tayong Filipino, may
English,
Philippine
math,
literature.
Filipino, science, yan po. Yan po yung mga core subjects natin dito sa Philippines. And same din sa kanila. No? May ganyan din sila. Then, in Ukraine, you also have the new types of school. Hindi ko lang maintindihan bakit may gymnasium. Anyway, siguro ko lang ng research. Then, you have lyceums. Familiar ako sa lyceums and sa colleges. Hindi lang ako familiar sa gymnasium na kanilang tinatawag. But this is organized for talented children.
Pero I think gymnasium would refer to mga sports-minded students.
Siguro, Doc.
Na gusto na yung sports. Kasi meron talaga silang course ng sports eh. Tayo wala.
Yeah. Meron po tayo sa sports. Sa senior high po may specialization ng sports. Kaya lang,
pero hindi course.
Wala tayo
Type
dito
of schools kasi ito eh.
Yes po. Okay, now let's go to Germany. Okay, so the Ministries of Education and Cultural Affairs in the States are responsible for the educational plan. So may central office din silang parang DepEd or CHED, no, na gumagawa ng kanilang educational plans. They have this, what we call the subject-centered curriculum approach. But subject-centered siya, but it is a learner-centered tasks in instruction. So when you say subject-centered, the courses are divided as separate subjects or disciplines. English, math, may iba talaga na subject. But interdisciplinary approaches are also needed. Kasi pwede magtuturo ka ng math, ma-involve din yung physics, yung mga ganun doka. Interdisciplinary yung approach. Hindi siya very rigid na math lang talaga, English lang talaga. So pwede siyang gamitan ng interdisciplinary approach as long as it is applicable. And this is also applied in DepEd. Ano ko na lang doon
Okay.
insert ko na lang. Kasi if you're going to check our RPMS, PPST, and the IPCR, during our classroom observation, it is stated there that the mastery of the teacher, that the teacher can teach across curriculum. Within or across curriculum. So the teacher should know when to use or when to connect the subject to other subjects po, as long as they are related. Pwede naman yung health, related sa science, yung music, related sa math, kasi may mga 1/4, 1/2, yung mga ganun, mga so pwede siya. So there is an interdisciplinary approach.
So you're saying na sumutin maging generalist kaysa specialist?
medyo mahirap siya sagutin, Dok. Pero kasi, Dok, pag may specialization kasi, Dok, at least ma-focus. Pero kahit na kasi may specialization, Dok, na parang in-encourage pa rin naman, Dok, na gamitan pa rin ng interdisciplinary approach. Kasi it would be medyo boring din po kasi if you are very rigid po na yun lang talaga ang iyong pamamaraan sa pagturo. I mean, you can actually, pwede naman siyang magturo ka with music or with, ano ba yun, na as long as it is applicable po.
So pwede kang master of all.
Jack of all trades. Okay. So anyway, so this curriculum approach demands scholar teachers. So scholar teachers ang tawag sa kanila who are experts in courses like biology, geometry, and history. Kasi nga, separate yung subjects pero interdisciplinary naman yung approach nila.
Historical biology.
Okay. In a curriculum change or revision, a commission is appointed. So ganito po, pag may mga changes po sa kanang curriculum, bumababa talaga sila sa grassroots. No? They include the serving teachers, yung mga teacher na active in the service, the school inspectors, yung mga supervisors natin, mga represent school research institutes, in the state as well as the subject matter specialists from the higher education institution. So that kung may pagbabago man, it should be research-based, science-based, at may data talagang binabasihan. Hindi lang yung, ito kasi na-observe ko, ito na lang yung gagawin ko. So dapat research-based talaga. Next, we have the curriculum development in Netherlands. Last po na country. So the Minister of Education sets the framework, so parang DepEd din or CHED. Then, in which individual schools should perform. So, dinadawnload na lang sa mga schools. However, there is no national curriculum, but there is what we call attainment targets in general education. Walang specific, walang structured na curriculum, pero may targets sila. So, based on those targets, doon kayo gumagawa ng curriculum. The central curriculum policy has turned into processes of decentralization. So parang decentralized na siya, no? And increase in local autonomy. So parang tinatawag natin itong contextualized na learning. Kung anong kailangan sa isang lugar, no? Yun yung approach na gagamitin mo at yun yung mga learning materials na ipoproduce mo. Schools are given more scope for the development of education in line with the specific needs and local environment of their pupils. Actually, this is encouraged din po sa DepEd na to contextualize our teaching. For example po, if you are assigned in an IP area, no, indigenous people, so yung mga learning materials mo, yung approach mo, ay kailangan ding suited din sa kanila. Okay, then schools have the freedom to determine their own curriculum within the framework of the core objectives. May targets lang din talaga sila. Scenarios have been formulated to guide schools on how to organize the different learning areas within their curriculum. So binibigyan lang sila ng guide. If this is the scenario, this is what you're going to do. However, you have to reach this objective. No? For example, sa reading, example lang to Dokat, that I'm not sure. Pero ito, for example, in the end of the school year, dapat 98 to 100% na yung reader. Then you have to devise a plan na paano yun ma-reach na 98 to 100% na yung reader from that class o ganun. Okay, Doc, yun lang po and good afternoon.
Okay. Little ano major observation mo?
Ang major observation ko, Doc, each country, they have different way of developing their curriculum. May pagkakatulad, just like having the core subjects or the national curriculum. But may countries din na walang national curriculum, but it is more on the decision of the school kung paano nila gagawin, but as long as ganun po, Doc. And kasi iba yung sa UK, kasi po, siya, more on sa culture, no? If there is changes, medyo dependent sila sa ang nangyayari sa kanilang society in order for them to change the curriculum. So, Doc, parang each country, they have their own unique way of developing their curriculum, but there is also similarities. Mga ganun po.
Okay, looking at, in general, yung the holistic view of European countries based on report mo, mag-differ sila ng Israel. Kasi titingnan natin yung Israel eh. Mag-differ sila because this is more formalized dahil legislated.
Yes po.
Napansin nyo? Oh, legislated ito, yung isa kabila, puro mga Republic Act pa lang. So when we say legislated, it really turned into. Secondly, makikita mo na noon kasi ang tawag sa atin is MEX. Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sports.
Yes po.
So, at the beginning of your report, sinasabi dito na mag-asawa talaga ang politics at saka ang culture. And, hindi. Sinabi natin politics, governance yan eh. Hindi naman yung mga politiko na tatakbo dyan na presidential or vice presidential. We talk about governance. So, ibig sabihin nun, when they tried, based on the report mo, pinapakita doon na yung governance nila will be dependent upon studying the culture of the people. So the curriculum design was actually studied very well. Kumbaga, sa report mo they went into proper consultation, di ba? Sabi mo, they involved other stakeholders like teachers.
Yes po.
Oo. And they went into benchmarking. Yung benchmarking, you talk about yung mga target, di ba?
Yes po, yes po.
Ang nakaganda sa kanila is may benchmarking. I think the Philippines, also other schools are doing this, lalo na para makagather sila ng maraming enrollees. They went from one place to the other to study also their types of yung mga approaches na ginagamit nila. So very important ang research in education because the facts that they gather will actually give the total picture, the true picture of the needs of our constituents, our clients who are our students and our parents, kumbaga. Ang ating clients, hindi lang yung mga estudyante, yung parents din mismo.
Yes,
kasi kahit ng ating mga learners are the one we are actually teaching, pero paano sila pupunta doon kung hindi din natin liligawan yung mga parents and we will study the status ng mga parents na yun? How do we know na hindi nakapag-aral yung mga parents and wala din silang kita? That is why even if they would like to send their children to school, hindi na mapadala kasi kasama sila sa paghahanap buhay parang ganon. So, nakakatulong ang research and yung benchmarking, even career guidance. So, I think looking at it, mas advanced na ito. Advanced na talaga itong Europe.
Advanced na talaga. Dapat mag-benchmark din tayo sa kanila.
Pero there is one thing that you have mentioned na nag-question ako kasi sabi mo, sa area nila, meron silang gina-offer na subjects or courses na hindi relevant, na hindi katulad ng African countries na for survival. Ano yun? Why did you mention that?
Doc? Saan ba yun?
Nakikinig ako sa report nyo, ha?
Ay, Doc, ano po yun? Sa Ukraine po yun, Doc. Sa Ukraine kasi, Doc, one of the poorest countries siya sa Europe.
Actually, number one yan. The number one poorest.
No. Tapos ano kasi, Doc, sa Ukraine, parang more on theories sila, Doc. Walang masyadong application at walang yung real life situation. So siguro more on lecture, more on ito yung mga nangyari. Walang parang hindi nila nagagamit talaga in the field. So kaya hindi sila marketable o hindi siya sa labor market. Parang yung kailangan na manpower sa labor market hindi nila na-provide kasi hindi naman tinuturo sa school.
So if you were to decide, dalhin mo doon ang anak mo kasi pa rin yan European country pa rin yan.
Kawawa nga, Doc, binomba pa.
Paano yung president nila? Hindi na alam kung anong solusyon. Baka academic yung theory nila palagi
Nga po, Doc.
Okay. Any more observation from the class? Wala? O, sige. Kailangan maging observant kayo kasi napapansin ko kasi personally na tayong mga teachers, we're not so concerned about curriculum designing and development because in the first place, what we do is nandito tayo sa ating respective lokal, waiting for the modules from top management to be delivered to us. And whatever we have delivered, we also delivered na naman doon sa mga parents. Kawawa ang parents. Pero we will discuss more on that after this studying the foreign style. We will go to the local area. Let's proceed. Sino sunod?
De la
Thank
Peña po,
you.
Doc.
Sino?
La Peña po.
Kay Giselle. No, South America na ni. When we say South American, we mean Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, okay, Puerto Rico, and so on and so forth. So let us see. And find out the relevance of this curriculum doon sa kanilang sa participation nila sa universe pageantry.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Doc. So, I'll be talking about the curriculum development in South American countries. So, first, let's have a recap. What is curriculum? So, curriculum is multiple steps of creating and improving a course taught in school. So, it is a process of creating and improving a course. So curriculum development in South American countries. So South American countries has 23 South American continent has 23 countries. And the most countries that excels are Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela. The education in Latin American countries. So, in Latin American countries or the South American countries, they have the free education. So, they have shorter course than the Philippines. Wherein, in the Latin American, they only have 11 mandatory years, unlike in the Philippines that we don't really have mandatory years, but we have the primary schooling for 6 years and another secondary schooling for another 6 years. So we have 12 primary and secondary schooling. The Latin American countries uses a model by Ramier's framework that has 5 levels. So the first level is the enrollment. It has the access of education. Since I've already said na mandatory yung primary and secondary education in Latin America. So all mothers, all parents are encouraged to enroll with a specific condition. So, ang yung condition na yon applies to the learner, the parents, and the school. So, the school must have the sufficient classroom. The parent must be willing since it's mandatory. So, parang cliche masyado kasi sinabi na nga na mandatory pero sa condition is must willing. And the third one is the student must be healthy. So when we say about healthy, yung makakonsentrate yung students upon the education. So walang excuses kasi in Latin Americas, they have the medical institution like in our country we have PhilHealth. But unlike in their countries, yung parang free yung hospitalization kasi mas malaki yung tax nila compared sa atin. Sa atin kasi ma-free lang yung hospitalization kapag na-confine ka with specific illness or ano ba tawag or like major illnesses yan siya. Unlike sa kanila, like magpa-check up lang, it is free. So, kasali yan sa condition nila. The second stage of their curriculum is the quality or the service that they provided the teachers that uh, the quality of the teachers. So they are having the background check of the teachers, though parang ano siya masyado sa privacy ng teacher, but they really go deep into the background of the teacher, like yung pag-iisip psychologically, para ma-provide ng teacher yung kung ano ba dapat, yung ah, ituro sa mga student, with also a specific condition that uh, the school must provide a minimum number of school days, which is similar to the Philippines, and pre-existing skills. So, 'di ba sa kanila parang they have private tutorings, or they have tutorials to make para mag-excel yung mga bata. Aside from the free education of the government, the mandatory of education of the government, the parents also send their child or the learner to a private tutoring to have another skill, to develop skills. And the school must create a teacher student interaction. So that's the stage 2. The stage 3 is staying in school, or uh, parang hindi nila gina-encourage na naga-drop yung student, since it's mandatory. uh, since it's mandatory, lahat talaga sila parang hindi ko alam, ay hindi ko na research, sorry, kung ano yung parang fine nila kapag mag-drop yung student. But since mandatory siya, and they lessen the number of years that the students must be in school, with the condition of sufficient successful experiences and the delaying of the employment. So pag hindi ka nakatapos within ng 11 years of schooling, hindi ka talaga matatanggap sa mga trabaho. Pero kung sa atin kasi, we have sin though we have the child labor na law, pero meron talagang mga kumpanya and other small scale businesses sa atin na naga-receive pa din ng mga minor laborers. So sa kanila hindi talaga 'yon pwede. So that na ang mga learners is magstay sa school. So the next stage is the benefit of being schooled. So as what had ma'am na said kanina sa first report, uh, in the Philippines we have the academic base, but in the Latin America or the South American countries, they collect skills. They collect skills. And that is the product of the stage 3 that is here into stage in the stage 4. But if you have money, you are encouraged by the government to have your child, tutored in private institutions. So the conditions are the value of time and effort, and also the skills that are taught, and the skills that acquired by the learners. So the last stage, or the fifth stage, is the future. So it is the expansion of the future. So what you reap is what you sow. Ito yung fifth stage ng Latin American countries. Hindi na siya condition, but rather an element that to foster their graduates with a non-discriminatory attitude. So that is the curriculum in the Latin American countries. So next, we'll be having the curriculum development in the Philippines. In the Philippines, we have
Excuse
adapt.
me,
Yes
wag,
po.
wag mong don't say it in detail, no? Kasi mayroon tayong lesson for that. Oo.
Okay pa.
Yan lang
Sorry.
is pick up a significant highlight that will actually an analogy to your report.
Okay. So in the Philippine Republic curriculum, we are using now the vernacular, which we got from the medieval, or the medieval century. The For grade 1, grade from kinder to grade 3, we have the mother tongue based curriculum. That's one in the Philippines. Next is the use of instructional materials that are Philippine oriented. Uh, as what Ma'am Iris said kanina na, sa RPMS natin teachers, we have this ah, parang MOV natin kung ano yung ginamit natin na learning materials that can be found in the society, in the community. So, ito yun siyang curriculum ng Philippines. And another is the learner-centered, though we are not really the pioneering curriculum in this learner-centered, but we adapted it. And next is the spiral progression. Same pa din kanina yung sinabi ni Ma'am Iris na pwede tayong kumuha dito na subject, ituro natin dito, kuha naman tayo sa kabila, turo natin dito. So we can mix and compare and expand the lesson. So another one in the Philippines, we have the K to 12 basic education, which we have adapted from other countries. So that would be my report. Another synthesis lang po is we have the from the Latin Americans, the difference niya sa Philippines is in the Philippines we are not free in education. Though we have the public school that we can access by the other learners, sa Latin Americans, totally free yung 8 years. 8 years na primary and secondary from ages 7 to 15 years old. So, sa atin, mag-start sa atin ng 5 years old yung kinder, then 6 naman yung grade 1. Sa Latin American, 7 na ang start ng kanilang schooling. So, nasa parents na in Latin Americans kung papaaralin niya in private school ang kanyang anak with uh, preschool. Preschool. So, nasa parent na yon. Another one is mm, the Latin Americas usually have this full development of human personalities and fundamental stages. So, in the Philippines, we have mixed curriculum and more likely on academics. So, that would be my report. Doc, naka-mute po yata kayo.
Do you have any data showing to us what are the subjects offered in their curriculum?
Didn't,
Oo. Like, if you will observe, kanina di ba sabi ko, na most of the winners, if not number 1 or 2, but they're included in the top 5 of mga international beauty pageantry, di ba? Nakita mo nasa South America. So there must be an influencing factor dun sa kanila na pwedeng nakakatulong sa personality development. Wala ka idea?
yung ano lang po nila is they focus on the literacy of their students since from the previous year they have 94.45% of literacy percentage po.
Yeah, but the thing is in terms of personality development, because I'm sure based on my other readings, part of their subjects actually is yung ano nila yung personality development. Maaga pa sila nag-aaral kung paano yung poise nila, yung stance nila, how they appear in public, mga swaying sa kanilang katawan. That's part of their development eh. Which I'm asking kung baka nasali yun sa kanilang mga curriculum. I do not know kung ano bang subject yon, but it's still part of the development na ano. I do not know in the Philippines how teachers teach personality development. Kasi pagka sinabi natin personality development, hindi naman lang yung way of speaking, it's yung stance mo, yung the way you dress up, everything about you, how you appear in public, ganun. So, pati yung paglakad mo lahat-lahat, like Kateo Gray from Australia yan siya, di ba? If you were a contestant sa beauty contests, you cannot actually obtain a skill at that a very short time, like 3 months training, hindi eh. Kaya yung ating mga winners, halimbawa, hindi ka agad maka-reach doon sa mataas na pwesto. Okay lang, number 10, number 5, ganun. Kasi sa atin ang training natin, Juan, very short term lang, di ba? After winning a certain title, you will undergo training for that matter para maging prepared ka. Pero actually, hindi masyadong prepared yung 3 months training. How do we train our students? Di ba, mula pa sa grade 1, we train them how to do 1 plus 1, 2 plus 2 para pagdating ng kaya sa until now. Memorize pa nila yon. But how many of our students or learners, ma-memorize natin yung tinuro natin ngayon? You expect na mag-100 tomorrow and you expect them to memorize next year. Wala na. That is why we keep on refreshing them every now and then kahit pa nagdagdag yung kanilang level ng learning. You keep on repeating the same lessons yesterday, the other day para ma-part of the character. Yun ang point natin sa personality development. But the thing is, what's happening in our personality development in the Philippines? Nagde-deteriorate eh. Pero tumataas ang ating technological skills. Pero yung ating personality in terms of attitudes, beliefs, di ba? Pag sinabi nating personality, it is a sum total of attitudes, beliefs, and everything about us, skills, and knowledge, attitudes, and habits. So sa atin, na-center tayo sa skills development. So nawala na yung ating value system, moral system, which is part of our personality development. Yun ang, kaya tinatanong ko kung, I'm sure part yun sa kanilang character development or personality development. Eh, bakit sila nanalo? Bakit nung bata-bata pa ako, alam niyo ang winners palagi, Europe. Ngayon, ang Europe wala na eh. Noon, dati mananalo, Miss
Venezuela
England.
po. Always. Venezuela.
Oo.
Colombia.
Sila, Brazil, Puerto Rico. So there must be something sa ilang curriculum talaga. Hindi ba kayo na nun? Ay, nung una, Finland, Netherlands, Europe, ay, naku, wala. Ngayon, meron na tayong African, di ba? So, meron talaga yung curriculum na may nakukuha silang subject na pinag-aaral. I like, yung report kanina isa, ano yung report, kanino ba yung report yung gymnasium? Sa iyo ba yung Iris?
Yes, Doc. Sa iyo
Oo.
po yun, Doc.
Oo, yung baka meron silang BS in sports or gymnastics. Totoo yan kasi meron silang
Posible, Doc.
gymnastics.
Posible, Doc.
Yes.
Di ba yung Russia, Doc, ano din yan siya? Yung sa gymnastics, lagi silang
Oo,
nananalo.
magagaling sila din doon, di ba? Sa
Yes, yes.
Wala tayo nun. Hindi tayo mananalo sa gymnastics. So, kikita niyo yung curriculum nila, yung mga focus nila. So, dito sa focus ni, sa South America, it's more on beauty yan sila eh. Kita ko talaga yung beauty nila. Wala ka bang subject dyan na mapresent ko, Giselle, in terms of...
Nag-search po ako right now, Doc, pero walang nagalabas po.
Another thing is, gusto ko malaman yung free hospitalization nila. How is it, applied yung free hospitalization? Kasi you mentioned about healthcare. Ang healthcare kasi, ibinibigay yun sa mga 18 years and above. Pero sa mga bata, hindi kasi yung mga bata natin is already beneficiaries natin.
Yes
So,
po, Doc.
so wala sila dun sa ganon. Aside from that, pag sinabi nating healthcare, sa atin dito, well, we are confined in the hospital. Pero kung halimbawang mag-consultation, may bayad. Unless, of course, we consult the public health center. Posible na dun sa area na sinasabi mo sa South America, they have sufficient hospitals and clinics that offer free hospitalization or free rather, hospitalization naman kasi hindi mo sinabing free medical check-up. Posibleng dun lang. Another is, you mentioned about kanina yung sabi mo na dapat tapusin nila yung 11 years or else hindi sila makakapasa. But have you noticed?
Makatrabaho po.
Hindi makatrabaho. Pero, makakagraduate sila. Kasi, halimbawa, yung kapatid ko, grade 6 ang natapos. Ngayon, gusto siya magbalik sa eskwela, 20 years old. Alam nga, magbalik sa first year. So, his attention was called by dating, ano bang tawag nun dati? Hindi naman DepEd na tawag eh. Basta yung high school, sabi
Dex po.
DEX ba?
Opo,
Department of
before
Education
DepEd.
and Sports. Yung sa high school department, elementary department, his attention was school na mag-take siya ng PEPT program, remember? Yung bagang, you will take the exam, tapos kung anong resulta nyo, ibibase nun sa edad mo. So, pag
Yes,
take
Doc.
niya ng exam, nakapasa siya, edad naman yung 20, so pirasok na siya sa college. Hindi dumaan ng high school, so walang experience. Hindi takot na takot siya pumasok sa college. So he took up his first year college, nanibago yung tao. That's another thing na observation ko. And ano pa ba yung nakita kong kwan? You think about healthy and you talk about sufficient classroom. May I ask you, how many students do you have in your classroom today? And do you have enough classroom? And do you have enough classroom? Do you have enough chairs and tables for your children?
In my case po, I only have 28 students. In our school, we do not have enough classrooms, but we have more than enough chairs po kasi maliit lang yung population
So,
namin.
ibig sabihin nun, crowded ang room mo.
Ng chairs po, ng hindi ng students.
I think you should also understand the parents why parents do not send their children.
Ah,
Diba?
ay nasa isolated, parang malayo kasi yung school namin from the city po. So, maliit lang talaga yung barangay school namin.
So why do you think the parents are not sending their children to school despite na marami kayong upuan?
Actually, Doc, 100% ng aming community sa amin nag-aaral. Parang maliit lang po talaga from ang PTA po namin families is ang average po namin is 60 to 70 families lang po talaga, Doc. And from kinder to grade 10, we only have 125 number of students po. Maliit.
So you make an assessment that your classrooms and chairs are more than enough or enough, just enough, not enough?
Ang chairs po, more than enough, pero ang classroom kulang po talaga. Kasi I'm handling grade 1 and grade 2 po ngayon and pinagsasabay po. Before the pandemic, sabay po talaga sila sa isang classroom.
Talaga?
Yes
Parang
po.
mo. Nangyayari pa ba yun? I thought it never happened
Yes, Doc,
today.
it's happening, Doc.
Meron.
Grade na ano
Kasi ang alam ko nung panahon ko, nung
Back-to-back.
grade 1 ako, katabi ko yung grade 2 eh. What could be the reason?
Hindi enough ang teachers, Doc.
Okay,
Tapos hindi din
teachers.
enough ang classroom.
So baka gusto niyo magbalik sa dati doon sa under the tree.
Baka malapit na mangyari, Doc.
Are we improving in our educational system? On the question of spiral progression, are you amenable to this scheme? Considering the performance of your learners?
Doc, pwede sumagot, Doc.
Sige, Iris.
Actually, Doc, medyo mahirap talaga siya, Doc. Kasi when you say spiral progression kasi, Doc, halos lahat ng mga lesson, dadaanan. For example, sa grade 7, may mga physics na sila, may mga chemistry. Medyo mahirap pa yun. Para sa kanila, for me, Doc, medyo mahirap. Although, hindi naman ganun kalalim yung pag-explain, pero dinadaanan talaga. Yan po yung challenge. Pero at the same time po, okay din naman po siya in preparation for the bigger na or mas mabigat na lesson in the future po. Parang prepare talaga sila, Doc, na when they graduate, is alam talaga nila. They're ready. However, yun nga po, challenge because yun na the mastery of the teacher kasi may mga teachers na nagtuturo na hindi naman talaga nila subject.
So what is the implication of that situation on the teachers?
The teachers have to study more. They have to Doc, they have to exert more effort. Kasi ang alam ko kasi dati, Doc, yung parang for example grade 7 general science, grade first year, second year biology, third year chemistry, fourth year, physics, ganun yung Doc dati, di ba?
So what is the implication of the teacher situation on the top management?
Uh, ano siya, Doc? It's a challenge. It's
Challenge lang?
it's
Gusto ko
difficult.
mag-aral. Challenge lang?
It's difficult. Um, pero until now, siguro, Doc, understudy pa rin yan, Doc. Under research, Doc, kung
O,
ano
yung
pang
mga
kailangan.
questions ko is for you to
Yes,
open up your mind,
yes,
no?
Doc.
Oo. Kasi tinatanong ko yan lahat always whenever I handle the subject. Kasi marami palaging issues na lumalabas eh.
Yes,
Every
Doc.
time na
Always
I
like
handle
that.
the subject, iba-ibang issues. Pero there's an implication to all of you teachers. Do not stop schooling. Do not
Yes po.
stop learning.
Yung
Because
lifelong
you do not
learning
know
yan, Doc.
tomorrow. Your tomorrow may not be the same as today. Baka there are more challenges tomorrow. And so, put it in action yung desire nyo. Hindi lang sa, it's a challenge. Ang challenge should be doable.
Yes.
Doable.
Para hindi kasi masyadong mabigat, Doc, kaya challenge na lang yung gamitin natin, Doc. Yan yung ginagamit kong term, Doc, para hindi sila challenge yan
So
sa'yo.
lahat kayo now are on the challenge situation. That's why
Yes,
you're
Doc.
involved. So it's an implication also sa ating top management to do something, create a program, faculty development, yung gano'n. That is a challenge na doable naman. Pag sabihin natin walang funding, it's a challenge for the top management to look for funding, seek funding institutions from the government. Ganun lang yan. Well, the government is offering scholarship for grade 7 hanggang sa senior high. Likewise sa teachers, because teachers what? Are the great factors in the development of the learners. Okay. Thank you, Giselle. I wish everybody will be observant in every report because this is very important when we go to the next level. Sinong sunod kay Thank you, Giselle. Sino sunod sa'yo, Giselle? Mute ka.
Check ko po muna.
Australia daw.
Ha?
Australia?
Ano ba sunod?
Australia.
So ikaw yan.
Hindi po.
Sino?
Culinares po, Doc.
Ha?
Culinares.
Culinary. Wala yata siya. Okay, culinaries, wala. Okay, we skip that. Anyway, ang subject naman is independent. Kumbaga, it's not sequential. From Australia, the next.
Ako po,
Si
Doc.
Mamaita po.
May, sige na ako, May. Ano yan? Anong iyo, May?
Korea and Vietnam po.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay po. I will present my screen. All right.
So, nasa Asia na tayo.
Yes po. Let me know kung nakikita na po yung screen ko.
Oo.
Okay. Sige po. So, I will be comparing this to our curriculum. Doc, ang ginawa ko is yung aking comparison nasa baba ng konti. So, a little bit about each of them muna before I go into the comparison. Let's start with Vietnam. All right. So Vietnam is known for its rigorous curriculum that is deemed as competitive for student. We will see a lot of this, especially in later when we go to Korea. So a little bit about the history, just so we know. Vietnam's education pre-colonial started with the Confucian style of education, which man is the center of the universe. But it also has some benefits because they believe everyone has the same potential. So the community and a being good citizen is the priority instead of personal gains. So this is because they are communist, and right now they are still communist then. And this is part of culture then. Teachers are seen only as lower than the king. I was able to visit Hanoi some years ago, and nakita ko that they have temples
Mhm.
dedicated to literature, studying, and teachers. And according to the people there, meron silang parang Teacher's Day. Di ba sa atin, kung Teacher's Day, we greet our teachers, Happy Teacher's Day, ganun. Sa kanila, it's part of their culture that during Teacher's Day, they go to yung kanilang mga favorite teacher's house and they give gifts, flowers, chocolate, yung mga gifts na ganon. Yung iba, pupunta lang para lang mag-thank you, hi, mag-ganon. So that is also part of their culture. So colonial period, 19th century, they were colonized by the French and they revamped the education system, which they made the purpose is just to serve the colonial masters. So everybody was made to learn French. The French built elementary schools, primary colleges, secondary schools, and they made three universities. But everything is limited. Pinipili lang nila who can study. So during the colonial period, 95% of Vietnamese are illiterate. A little comparison din sa Philippines, around our colonial period, ganyan din nangyari sa atin. So, liberation, 1945, with the liberation with President Ho Chi Minh, which is now a name of a city, he had this propaganda on fighting against poverty, illiteracy, and invaders. So, one of his speeches included, "An illiterate nation is a powerless one." So, within 1 year, 75,000 literacy classes was established and about 96,000 teachers to help the 2.5 million people learn to at least read and write. So the thing about Vietnam is we have or they have a very traditional value. So part of those were they were encouraged to study and they were encouraged to respect their instructors. So teachers were viewed as very important and at times more important than parents. This was true during the feudal, colonial, because the colonizers were the teachers. So malaki ang importance sa teachers, and it prevailed even until now because the community is very vital. Education is viewed as a means of building a community. So this will occur and recur in what I will be discussing more on Vietnam. Everything is seen for the good of the community rather than personal advancement. So their education goal is improving people's general knowledge, training quality human resources, and nurturing and fostering talent. So 1998, this is the start of their K to 12 program when they really started to implement higher education reforms, primary education was free. And then amended education law 2005. This law allows public and people funded or private schools. It also made education universal for primary and lower secondary education. So hindi lahat, but in 2012, upper secondary is now free. So now primary and secondary became free. So this is the length of their basic ed. This is their K to 12. They have a year of preschool, primary school, secondary school, tapos medyo na iba yung kanilang high school. And of course, higher intermediate education, which is colleges or university. This is the breakdown. So your preschool or play group, 3 to 4 years old, and you have kindergarten. And then for primary school, grade 1 to 5, and then they have the middle school or junior school, 6 to 9, and their high school is 10, 11, 12. So K to 12 pa rin siya, pero it's a little different from ours, such that sa atin, we have junior high different. Our junior high is 7, 8, 9, 10. So kanila, yung 6 napunta sa junior high. And this is for the higher education. So they have a semester system which is kind of like ours. Term 1 starts August, term 2 starts January. Here are some of the social pressures that they are facing. Right now, we are starting to face this, but wala pa tayo there. So they have very advanced and specialized high school, which is some students are normally expected to take additional courses. So the smarter you are, the more courses you are given. So parents also enroll their children in extensive tutoring session. So to pass the high school graduation exam or university entrance exam, one has to enroll in cram schools. So students who cannot afford tutor because uh, the school kasi is free, so you can if you have extra money, if your parents have extra money, they can enroll you in tutoring. So if you want to go into a good university, you enroll in cram school. So cram school is like a ano parang entrance exam school. So it prepares you for entrance exam. They also have a graduation exam. So the high school graduation exam is like a national test. It's taken at the end of grade 12. So before you can get your diploma or graduation diploma or general upper secondary education diploma, you need to take this. It is a it is a national level exam. This is different from the exam of the school. So you have mathematics, literature, foreign language, natural science, social science. Foreign language exam can be any of the following. So they do have options to choose: English, French, German, Chinese, Japanese, Russian, or Korean. So right now, I guess the most popular is English and Chinese because of the demands, and Japanese pala din because a lot of Japanese companies right now are investing in Vietnam to get cheaper manpower. So a lot of the schools do have English as a secondary high school for secondary language, especially in high school. If they want to apply for university or overseas, they need to take IELTS, TOEIC, or TOEFL exam. So because of this, they have to have English. So most of the schools do have English as secondary language. So, teaching quality. So, Vietnam has increased enrollment in the recent years. However, they are setting and implementing minimum quality criteria for school facilities. And these school facilities are all government. So, just FYI, 20% of the total GDP budget goes to education. So, that is actually very big. And since teacher quality is low, most teachers moonlight as tutors. So students who take tutorials always get an advantage. So even in public school, if the student has tutorials, mas lamang sila than the rest who cannot afford tutorials. So other social issues, low income families don't enroll their kids in secondary school. Although it's free, they decide not to. So usually pinapawork na lang nila. Tapos they do have active student-centered approaches, but that's quite rare. So most students lack confidence in applying what they have learned. Now let's go to Korea. For the history part, this is a mix of North and South Korea. What'll differ is the curriculum then later. So no nation has a higher degree in enthusiasm for education than Korea. This is actually part of culture then. So Korea is one of the top performing countries according to PISA, or Program for International Student Assessment. Excuse me. So this is a bit of their history and why they put so much what's this importance in their education system. Korea actually had one of the oldest university. In the year 372 AD, they have their first official university, a school in called Taihak. So in 992 AD, you have the Gukjam and Sung Kyun Kwan. So those are also institutions found. So even before colonial period, they already had universities. In but they're studying Buddhist and Confucian style. So these are the most ancient Chinese philosophical traditions that are incorporated in the curriculum. quite like the one in Vietnam, where they do include the Confucian style, where everybody has the right to study and everybody has the same opportunity to study. So, national and private education institute were founded only in the 19th century. These are by both government and individuals. So, that's around after that there's the colonial period, and then after colonial period 1945, that is when the policies were focused on a number of things, because nag-split na by this time, nag-split na ang north and south. All right, so colonial period in Japan, there's the Joseon Education Decree. This is part of the colonial period. So the Japanese, they wanted to obliterate all Korean culture and spiritual independence. Because remember, they were very Buddhist and they followed the Confucian style. So the Japanese, they didn't have any religion. They decided not to have a religion. Therefore, they wanted to take off all those spiritualism, cultural, anything to do with the that one in the education. So the subjects required are Korean, Japanese, Hanja, and arithmetic. So schools served more as preparation for jobs, not higher education. So 1911, there was a regulation of private schools. So even if you were a private school, you were heavily monitored by the government, the Japanese government at that time. So now we will split. Let's go first to the South Korean curriculum. So fast forward 1990, there was more of a increase enrollee in primary and secondary school. So there was a need to reform. This was after World War II, after the Korean War. So Korea really started to pick itself up. And because of that, umakyat ang kanilang enrollees. So there was a historic growth, sorry, typo, historic growth for the Korean economy. So Korea had to place value in its education in order for them to cope. So with fast industrialization of the country, Korea's labor market is highly segmented. As such, they needed to obtain higher education. So if you don't get the job that you want. Right now, most people who are in the school, they do get government positions, and government positions pay well. So even in North Korea, the same thing happens. So they are really focused on themselves, for talagang really pushing themselves to study and be the best and go into the best university. So their education goals, this is for South Korea after this is the 1990, after the education reforms, is to improve the transition from school to work and to the labor markets, because even if a lot of them did get educated, they still had a hard time getting into work. Actually, it's still the same even now. So they do have the most educated people in the world, but they are having a hard time getting a job. So they had to promote a lot of equity in education, strengthening social cohesion, pero ganun pa rin. So imagine from 1990 hanggang ngayon, it's still ganyan pa rin. So they still have, pero even up to now, they still have a new and a rising demand, not just for education, but because there are demands in society right now. So it's highly competitive even during COVID. So primary and secondary enrollment rates is free since 1990. So currently 80%, 86% of young Koreans enroll in higher education program, which is very big. The 86% of the country is in college or university. So educated person in Korea is highly respected. That's part of their culture then. So college graduate earns 2.5 times more than the colleagues who only graduate junior high degree. So like other high performing nation, teaching is also a very competitive education occupation. So the length of their basic education is also following the K to 12. So 6 years of primary school, where they only have 3 years of junior high. The other year, nabigay sa senior high. and then you have around 4 years of college. So this is for public and private school. So this is a chart. They have infant school. So because it is very competitive in South Korea, the parents, both parents usually work. So they have such a thing called nursery school where even baby pa dinideposit na nila in nursery school. I guess the only thing they learn there is to sing, and if you go to a very good nursery school, by the time you're age 4, you could start writing already. So kindergarten is 5 to 7 years old. By the time you start first grade, 7 years old ka na. So like ours, 1 to 6 sila. Dito lang naiiba for middle school or junior high, 7 to 9, and then high school is 10 to 12. Diba sa atin, 7 to 10, and then 11 to 12. So it's a little different naman sa kanila. So their semester is different. So semester 1 is March to July, and semester 2 is September to February. And then there are summer and winter breaks. The nine principal subject of primary curriculum is first and foremost moral education. They're taught what's right and wrong. And of course they have their Korean language, social studies, mathematics, science, physical education, and music, fine arts, and practical arts. So they do
Yeah,
place.
I was about to ask. I was about to ask kasi most of our Korean celebrities are graduates sa fine arts eh.
Yes,
Um,
because they have,
dramatic,
yes.
dramatic. Because they
Yeah.
have
Yes po. The
pala
reason
subject
why,
na ganyan.
yes po. The
Fine
reason why
arts.
they
Actually,
put,
acting is a fine art.
yes po. Even pre-colonial period, they have already placed a value to these subjects, these three subjects. So right now, the Korean
Mm-mm.
government has
Mm-mm.
actually implemented what's this? What they call cultural export, and these are what they export. Cultural export includes K-pop, K-drama, K-movies, yung kanilang mga pop stars and all that. Those are part of their GDP, a large budget of their GDP. From their cultural export, they have licensing agreement, what's this, syndication agreements and all that. Malaki ang nire-rake in nito. So maybe that's something we can learn from this in this curriculum din. All right. So they do also have English education, quite like Vietnam. They have TOEIC and TOEFL. So if you want to go into a good university, you are gonna have to know English. And their parents themselves are also very competitive, and they pay to send their school to private English language schools and stuff. So also part of this. Apart from the academics, the parents, this is part of culture. Apart from the academics, they have tutoring, may mga tutoring clubs, yung mga ganon. They also have at least one sport and at least one musical instrument or drama. So there has to be like
Move your
something.
slides. Move your slides.
Wala pa po, ano lang po yun, commentary, wala po siya here in the slides. That was just part of the commentary. Sorry. Okay, let's go to social issues. Here are the social issues that they have been facing even since 1990.
Slides. Slides.
Yes po. Is my slides not in social
Hindi.
issues? Sorry,
Wala. Asan?
let me reshare. Wala po sa social issues. Let me do that again. Ayan po.
Yan.
Social issues.
Okay.
Okay. So here are some of the social issues that they have been encountering even since 1990. They are highly competitive. As I mentioned kanina, apart from the schooling, their academics, their parents will also enroll their kids into one art lesson. Either it's an art lesson, music lesson, drama, something, or dance. And then they should have at least one sport. So in the afternoon, may sport din siya, soccer or something. And then they have tutoring Even yung mga bright na students, they have some specialized tutoring to make sure that they are the best. This is also very cultural. Asking questions, especially to your teachers or to your elders, is often discouraged. And the system is often blamed for high suicide rates in the country. So these are preteen to teen suicide, 10 to 19 years old. It's on the rise. And you have the surplus of university graduate that are overeducated but underemployed. So they have a master's degree, but they still cannot be employed. Okay, so the teacher's plight. So teachers, yes, it is a very sought after work. It is very competitive being a teacher in South Korea. But you are also overworked and a little bit underpaid. So in 1989, a Korean teachers union was established. So the Korean teachers still have more responsibility for counseling students and controlling their behavior kasi nga they're not allowed to question your teachers. So pinapaubaya na yun sa kanila ng parents. And Korean culture grants teacher the same authority. Yun. So as I mentioned in kanina, kahit 1 year old, dinideposit na nila sa school. Yung kanilang tawag na infant school. So everything is placed on the teacher. So there is more pressure on the teacher because they are second parent, or in this case, they are already parent. They are guidance counselor and they are teacher all in the same time. So di ba tayo din minsan ganyan din tayo dito? Dominated by tiger moms, cram schools, and highly authoritarian teachers, South Korean education produces ranks of overachieving students who pay a stiff price in health and happiness. This is by Sewoo-koo, who is an activist. Okay, so let's go to North Korea. Among the three curriculums, the North Korean curriculum is different because they don't exactly follow K to 12. So, just a little something.
Slides.
Nag-stop po ulit. Am I under universal? Sorry. Ulit po.
Di nag-move ang slide, ma'am.
Sorry.
Mike.
Okay, let me stop and again. I do not know what is happening. Let me redo that. Okay. Do you see education curriculum in North Korea?
Yes,
Yes
ma'am.
po.
Okay. Let me know lang kung nag-stop yung aking slide. All right. So, 1945, North and South split. So after the Japanese rule, they split already. The South Korean one, they adopted a different approach. And then in 1990, they had the K to 12 curriculum. North Korean education is different. Everything is state funded, thus everything is universal or free. So primary and secondary education are all mandatory. And the ones who take university, a third of them actually work for the government. So their length of education is a little different. You have 1 year of kindergarten, 4 years of primary education, and 6 years of secondary education. It is not stated how this is divided into high school. So ito lang in all the research that I've done, it's just this. 4 years primary, 6 years secondary, so it's not clear which is how the secondary is divided sa junior high or senior high, or if wala silang senior or junior. Then after that, if may pera ang iyong family, university. So UNESCO reported that North Korea had 35,000 pre-primary schools, 60,000 primary school, 111 secondary schools, and 23 colleges and universities. So it's actually not a lot. And they have this thing called social education. This is outside the formal structure of the school. So this is an education that's kind of like extracurricular activities. So they talk about family life, human relationships, and all about the North Korean society. because academics is not enough. They should have, this is based on the government, they should have knowledge, virtue, and physical fitness. So for colleges and university, their colleges are often 2 to 3 years only. Medical school is 6 years, and there are special colleges for science, engineering, art, music, and formal languages. They also have military colleges. So all universities receive a certain percentage of discharged soldiers as students. So similar to South Korea, where they have to tenure service to the military, in North Korea, they also have to tenure service to North Korea. So they usually have at least 3 years. And those who finish that are given a chance to go to university. Especially yung nagstay up to 5 years. So if you stayed up to 5 years, you are given more perks. So if you want to study, you can. If you want to do something else, the government gives you more leeway to do that. Education for the poor. So compared to the rest, because they are what's this? They are communist. They do have schools for the poor. So they have some things called labor school or labor senior middle school. Some people also call them factory college. So these teach the workers new skills and techniques while they work. So this is usually done during weekend or in the evening or through correspondence school. So those are the options nila for the poor who cannot stop working because they have to work. So there is also this. This is something that's only in North Korea that's not in the others. So they have this idolization propaganda. So since nursery, all students are taught to love the current leaders without question. Children are educated by Children's Alliance and then Youth Alliance. So North Korean university students must take ideology class regardless of major. So everything that they do has propaganda in them. There are these things that they call self-study session. Essentially, self-study sessions are intended to foster loyalty towards the dictatorship. It's not even towards the country. It's talagang towards the dictatorship or the leader of the country. So 15 minutes of each day is required. May doggy. Maingay yung doggy. So 15 minutes is usually allotted to the self-study program, which is usually reading idolization content. So this content is given by the government. So homeroom teachers or yung advisors will lead this self-study time. So after third and fourth grade, a boys league official will be the one after that. They will monitor your thoughts. I have no idea how they monitor your thoughts, but they will monitor your thoughts. So the objective is to keep learning the party's policies and current events. And of course, the current events is all propaganda because even the press is part of the government. So there's no freedom of the press here because they're all part of government. All right, so I'm gonna do a comparison, but I will be comparing only Philippines to Vietnam and South Korea because medyo malayo talagang North Korea from these three. These three have very many similarities. So the highest performing system, according to PISA, diminishes the influence of socioeconomic position on educational success, resulting in societies that are open to talent. But on the other hand, low performing system follows policies and practices that tend to amplify the effects of socioeconomic status. So if you're poor, you're poor. If you're rich, you're rich. So as a result, a section of the population lack the skills needed to fund productively, driving up health, welfare, and crime costs. So this is true across all three. You have uh, the advantage of if you have more means than the rest. So even in Vietnam and South Korea where education is free, but if you cannot afford tutor, parang lamang yung mga kaya ng tutor compared to you. So Confucian schools. So before colonization, Vietnam and Korea followed the Confucian style of school. So both country culturally place high value on their teachers. So students from both countries are also highly competitive. So compared to ours here, culturally hindi eh, we're not. Um, Maybe we are more friendly, pero sa kanila doon, they really compete among themselves. Curriculum type. So all three follow the K to 12 system. Iba-iba yung kanyang paghati, but all are K to 12. So the government body in charge. So for us, we have DepEd and CHED. For Vietnam, you have MOET, or Ministry of Education and Training. And for South Korea, you have Ministry of Education and Human Resource Development. Just for comparison, just so you know our size. So the population of the Philippines, this is all 2021 data because 2022 data is not yet in. We have 110 million, Vietnam around 98 plus million, and Korea 51 plus million. So our budget for, keeping that in mind, our budget for education, sa atin, it's 7.5% of the national budget. Plus, iba pa yung nakukuha ng local, iba pa yung supports that we get from the private sector, and iba pa yung nakukuha natin from the luxury tax, or the taxing of devices. For Vietnam, pinakamalaki, 20% of their total budget goes to the education department. In Korea, it's 4.7, but it increased to 5.4% in 2016. So, how free is the education? So, it's sa atin here, all public schools is free. There's a voucher system for private school and tertiary school. For Vietnam, free up to upper secondary school. And for Korea, K 12 is free in the public school system because they also have private schools, which is also, they also have mga sectarian schools doon na free, and they have foreign schools din doon. So, unemployment rate. Unfortunately, Philippines brain has the highest unemployment rate compared to the other two. So we have a 6.6 unemployment rate, even if mataas-taas ang ating budget for education. And most of us, even the unemployed, can read and write. And they are multilingual. Yes
Guides.
po. Ay, nawala ulit. Okay, I will redo that.
Nawala.
I don't know what is happening. Let me do that again. Okay, so I am here in unemployment rate. 6.6% sa atin. In Vietnam, there's 3.72%, which is halos tied with Korea, 3.7%. Ang ano lang with Korea is they are underemployed. So these are only the unemployment rate. It is not in, they did not put the underemployment rate. So, what is considered in the educational reforms? Sa atin sa Pilipinas, we consider the employment rate of the country first and foremost. For Vietnam, it's the economic expansion that gave way to that. So there were so many opportunities that happened, and they knew they needed to train their people. And for Korea, the same thing with us, employment rate din eh. We wanted a high employment rate, and that was considered, or first and foremost considered, when we were doing our education reforms. So education reforms in the Philippines aims for better quality and more access. So that's our goal, but yeah. Personal reflection, we have the least government control in the country. However, our teachers are overworked and underpaid. The other two, they just really have overworked teachers. So in Vietnam, there's a strict government control because they are still communist until now, but they have a very high regard for their teacher. In Korea, they have extreme rigidity in school system, but they respect their teachers. But even if they respect their teachers are still overworked. So our curriculum, it still needs work. So the government needs to allocate funds for curriculum development. For Vietnam, government has given more and more control to private schools ngayon. So now Vietnam has opened the door to private school. They're given more leeway. And then they have a lot of good partnerships coming up and good networks. So right now they are having a partnership with Japan, in which for Japanese companies, if they come to Vietnam, walang bayad, walang tax for the next, I think 5 years. Sa atin dito, we wanted to get these companies, but I think the only thing we give them is no tax for 1 year. 1 year lang. So kay Vietnam, 5 years. So mas maganda yung ano nila. So we don't have as much partnerships sa kanila kasi when the companies come here, they also set up a school or a training facility, or they partner up with a school to make sure that they have the quality of people, manpower resource that are trained just for their company. An example sa atin is Square Enix. Square Enix is a game company from Japan. It's one of their most prestigious one. It is right now they have tied up with LaSalle in Dasma. So if you are studying in LaSalle Dasma and then you want to go into Square Enix, they have a course, they have training, they have everything that they need. You can even intern already while studying there. So that's a good advantage that they have. In Korea, it is a very rigid system, and it did and it still does drive up suicide rates. So they have to give up some control, and they have to really reform not just their education system but their culture, because this is cultural. The very rigid system where everybody is very competitive, that has become part of their culture, and it's not a very good culture. Vietnam is starting to follow that because there's so much economic growth, there's so many opportunities. Everybody is becoming competitive to the point that their suicide rates for students is starting to increase. Sa atin, wala pa naman, or at least wala pang numbers na binibigay. So that is my reflection, and these are my sources. And yan lang po, Doc. Kasi the others are already continuation, where how I think next lesson na po yung iba. Alrighty.
Okay, any reaction or observations before I give my observations? Mga classmates, I'd like you to be observant, I said. Kasi importante yun. If you would like to become a curricularist, you must be observant around you para mas madali yung it will be effective at saka doable and workable, profitable.
Doc, comment lang, Doc.
Okay, sige.
It's about sa North Korea, Doc, yung sinasabing laborers schools, laborers senior middle schools, factory colleges.
Factory
I think,
colleges.
Doc, kasi para sa working poor, di ba sa
Yes,
poor
po.
na working na mga ng mga students. Parang actually, Doc, may ganyan din tayo dito sa Philippines, pero hindi lang siguro sa amin. I see it that way because most of the students, Doc, yung mga tinatawag nating sa alternative delivery mode, yung ADM students,
ALS, you mean?
sila yung mga students, Doc, na nag-aaral, ay nagtatrabaho, for example, sa umaga, tapos may one day lang talaga sila, Doc, na pumapasok. Kasi naging teacher ako ng ADM dati. One day in a week, tapos doon lang talaga sila pumapasok. Tapos binibigyan lang din sila ng mga modules. Kaya yung parang ganito na setup na modular. Pero dati pinapractice na siya, doctor selected lang. Yun yung talagang pwedeng mag-avail, yung mga nagtatrabaho, yung hindi talaga pwede na pang mainstream kasi they have to work. and they cannot afford to give up their work kasi nga may pamilya na, may mga they have to help their family. So kaya parang may ano siya doc, may similarity siya dito sa Philippines, yung labor school, yung labor senior middle schools, tapos lang lang sa factory colleges kasi may mga college din diba doc na dati ang alam ko may Sunday, yung Sunday school, mga ganun.
I heard of yung
Kaya,
Sunday
yun
school
doc.
din. Yeah.
Or we would like to
Or
ask
yung
Mike,
night
how do
night
these schools
school.
work?
Which one po?
How do this yung mga
Yung
poor,
labor school? The labor school?
schools, yung
Yes po. The labor
factory
school,
colleges?
factory colleges.
Oo, di ba?
For the rural areas po yun. So, those are available sa rural na areas. And
Ano
what-
ito? Are these informal schools? Parang informal
Yeah,
ito.
pero di ba sa what's this North Korea mandatory ang school.
Yeah,
So,
according to your
they are mandatory sa school. Therefore, you have to study no matter what. Pero paano yan kung, di ba, yung mga farmers, ganyan, ang the only ka, ka-help nila is yung mga anak nila, mga ganyan. So,
Oo.
they have to work in the fields. Yun, mag-a-apply sila nung labor senior school. Parang senior high. Labor
high.
senior
Now,
middle
what
school.
about the frequency of attendance? How often do they meet? Is it every day? Is it once a week? Like yun,
Iba-iba
what
po.
I re-
May ibang school po na yung gabi lang. May ibang school na weekend lang. And may ibang school na correspondence. So, I guess that will depend on the school that offers it. So, merong iba-iba. Merong yung
for as
gabi.
long as they follow the mandate, kumbaga.
Yeah. Yeah. Basta parang enrolled sila. Pinapakita nila sa government na enrolled sila.
So that is in reference to North Korea, no?
Yes po.
Oo, North Korea. Any observation pa? Thank you, Iris. I would like also to mention about yung report kanina na according to your report, teachers were considered more important than parents.
Yes,
How do
that's
this
true
relate
in
to-
Vietnam
Oo.
and Korea. Yeah.
Oo. How do you relate to the Filipinos?
Baliktad naman sa atin. Feel ko lang
tayo.
Feel ko lang po.
I think because of their belief system, Kasi
Yes.
Christian nation tayo, so we give more time on that.
A little different. Kasi, di ba sa atin, the bulk of our curriculum follows talaga the Western style, which is the American style. Remember ko sinong pumunta sa atin, the Thomasites, they were missionaries. Ang pagpasok nila sa atin is, I am a servant. I am a servant of Jesus.
I am a
then I'll
missionary,
teach the
not
missionary.
mercenary.
Yeah, they are all missionaries na pinadala here, the Thomasites. So ang approach nila is, I am your servant, parang ganon. And I will teach you how to do the ways of the white man. Yun yung approach nila. Compared to the other two who started as Confucian style na I don't know paano yun, pero there was a point in their history kasi na talagang high regard ang teacher. Na the teacher is only mababa sa king. So if you're a teacher, and this one I really observed when I was in Vietnam, vacation lang, pero yung driver kasi doon, hindi, so yung guard dun sa kung saan kami nagtira, nagpapaalam kasi daw na mag-day off siya parang next week, ganon. Tapos, ano bang next week? Ayun nga, Teacher's Day daw. So, Teacher's Day, so tinanong namin, what's happening in Teacher's Day kung bakit ka magde-day off? Yun nga, sinabi niya na sasamahan niya yung anak niya, pupuntahan nila daw yung mga teachers na gusto ng anak niya. Ako, is that a thing here sa Hanoi? We were in Hanoi then. Yes daw. They go around to the teacher's house. They give flowers, they give chocolate, they give ganon. And then may thank you card pa sila to the teachers. So that's their cultural norm doon.
Have you observed in the Philippines, yung mga school children natin, when they give importance to the teachers, what is the implication on the feelings of the parents? here in the Philippines.
Okay. You know,
Sip dayon daw, Dok.
the thing kasi sa atin is, yes, we function as secondary parents. That I can honestly say. As teachers, the parents, they're understandably they're working. So talagang, iba, sinong nahablot nila is really the teacher. Pero I feel like the parents expect a little too much from us. Kasi culturally, hindi naman talaga tayo as teachers, we're not supposed to be your disciplinarian. And kung papagalitan namin ng anak ko, let's say, paluin natin in class or papahiya natin in class or pinatayo natin sa hallway dahil hindi siya nagdala ng kanyang homework, di ba aawayin tayo ng parents? So I feel like there's this parang gusto mong sabihin sa parents, ano ba? What do you expect from us? You don't want us to be their disciplinarian. But then, why don't you discipline your child? So, parang there's
So
like
kaya ba
that.
binigay doon yung moral obligation? Kasi I saw in your report na moral
Yes.
obligation
Yes.
was already
Binigay
in
sa
the hands of the
teachers.
teacher.
Yes, for
And
those
what do you think as
countries.
parents? If you're a parents, do you welcome that idea na yung moral obligation na for asana, which is handed down to us in the Word of God, na train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is adult, he will learn from it. What do you think? Oh, di
Um,
ba naano nyo?
depends. Kasi if that is a government mandate na, okay, the moral obligation of the child will be given to the teacher. If that is the case, give us the teeth. Let's say, okay, bawal ka magpalo ng estudyante pero pwede mo siyang ipatayo sa hallway and hindi ka aawayin ng nanay or bibigyan mo ng F yung student because ang gulo talaga niya sa class. Hindi ka pwedeng ipatulfo nung nanay, di ba? Those type of things. Kasi dito sa atin, konting something lang that this is I don't know why, maybe because nawala ang corporal punishments in school, all of a sudden the parents have a lot of power, but at the same time they expect so much from the teachers. So ang teachers nawawala ng teeth, kumbaga. So what can you do if rowdy ang student? Hindi mo naman siya pwedeng pahiyain, bawal. Hindi mo siya pwedeng paluin, bawal. Ipapatayo mo siya sa hallway. What if tumakas? Ikaw na naman liable
What
dahil
do you
tumakas siya.
suggest? For example, if you were the parents, would you agree to relinquish the
Hindi
moral
din.
obligation to the
Kasi din
teachers? Or if not, then what should be the bounds?
right now kasi we have we are a melting pot of different, not just culture, but religion. And each religion have their own belief. Therefore, maybe the moral obligation still would have to be with the parents. Therefore, kung rowdy ang student and nilagay mo siya sa class, dapat may karapatan din ng teacher to refuse entry sa class.
Okay, you went to school, you got your education more academically in all specialization, pero wala dong specialization on morality, ano? So,
No.
you can, so you can always relinquish to the parents after all that was entrusted to them.
Yan lang problem. Ang ano naman is iiyakan ka kasi sasabihin nung mom, I cannot pick up my child because I have work, I have ganon, please keep them in school. Mamaya lang kami 5 o'clock magkita. Paano po yan? Nakita niyo sa news, ma'am, this one happened like fairly recently. The recent school shooting, although this is in the States, but yung ganon, mom is busy, dad is busy, hindi nila take home yung anak niya. The school already said na there is something psychologically wrong with your child. Please take him home. Ayaw nila because nga, oh, sorry, I'm at work. What
Sabihin
happened?
natin na it will be part of the agenda of the PTA. Parental. Parenting rule. Diba? So consider nyo yun as halimbawa top managers na kayo in your respective school. That should be part of your agenda. Parenting seminar.
We have, hindi
Actually,
nag-a-attend
Doc,
po eh.
yes, Doc, share lang po, Doc.
Sige.
Pero actually, lagi naman talagang pinapatawag yung sa Doc, yung mga parents because we have that, yes, parenting seminar. Kaya lang, Doc, the problem is, yun nga, sabi ni Ma'am Maita, hindi talaga pumupunta. And they have their reasons. And tapos, yung mga hindi pa masyadong pumupunta na mga parents, yun pa yung mga may reklamo, no?
Yeah,
Especially pag
Correct.
may
true.
mga agreements, so
True.
bigla na lang, oh, bakit may ganyan, ganyan. Hindi naman
Home
sila,
visit. Meron
ano,
kayong home
yes,
visit.
yes, home visitation po, Doc.
Impossible ko
And
to home
actually, Doc,
visit, Doc, kasi yung mga
sumasama,
estudyante ko nasa Middle East.
mahirap kimamayta, Doc.
Ay, of course, ayun, may cultural yan. Multicultural. We're talking about, oh, di ba? We're talking about the Philippines versus,
Philippines
ano,
po. I mean, kasi the school namin, ever since nag-pandemic, si Brother Bo Sanchez already declared that we will not go back to face-to-face. Kasi nung nag-pandemic, nakita namin yung niche namin, which is yung mga anak ng OFW, yung mga nasa abroad na Filipinos. They want to enroll in a Filipino school, but at the same time, it's pandemic and they want to enroll in a Catholic school. So, nag-enroll sa amin. So, nag-shoot up po yung amin enrollment. From 400 yung school namin from K up to 12, bigla naging 3,500. Tapos 20 lang yung dinagdag naming teachers. So, you can imagine, Doc, yung aming, grabe yung aming ano talagang, wow. So, yan
marami
po
pa
yung ano.
teachers dito available siguro.
Matinik ang school
Okay,
namin
going
eh.
to another
Yan
question
po.
ko. You mentioned about dito sa, ano ba ito, Korea ba ito? Or Vietnam, the government schools are still unfunded.
Underfunded.
Unfunded.
Ah,
Okay? Unfunded ang nakita ko doon.
wait lang,
So
let me
I
go back
would
to
like
it.
to ask if they are giving priorities to public school, bakit sila unfunded? Whereas in the Philippines, the biggest budget is allocated sa education eh.
Sorry, it's
Dito sa
not
Philippines.
unfunded, underfunded.
Okay, so ano yung bakit underfunded kung siya halimbawa?
Although
What do you mean
Vietnam
by
has the
underfunded?
most percentage of their what's this? Vietnam has the most percentage, 20% sila compared to us.
Oo.
Uh I don't know, maybe blame it on corruption or something, pero
Hindi
I would
nawawala.
not know. Nawawala siguro. Pero you could see, compared to ours na halos 77% lang yung atin from our GDP, kanila that's 20%. And yet, ang kanilang libre is only up to upper secondary school. So, wala. Magic po yung iba. Hindi ko po alam.
You also mentioned about the surplus of an university
Unemployed.
graduates
Yes
who
po.
are
That's in
over
South Korea.
educated.
Yes po.
And they are unemployed.
Yes po.
I-compare mo sa Philippines, then most of these overeducated are still employed in part-time.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Kasi maraming compared sa kanila, I guess, or compared sa atin, I think here because we are predominantly English speaking sa mga universities, it's very easy for us to get extra work kahit na undeclared work. Pero if you have a college degree, you can work in Odes, you can work in Fiverr, which is all online work. That's all undeclared sa government, and yet kumikita pa rin. So there are ways na ganon. Compared to Vietnam, who don't use those services because hindi ang English language nila only came about in the last decade. Sa atin, we've been English speakers since the Americans came. So may advantage talaga tayo. Also, mahilig tayo
Yun.
mag-OFW. So, yun po.
So, ibig sabihin, no, we have more opportunities sa Philippines. Even
Yes.
if you're overage, overeducated guy, you always have a place if you want to get a place.
Yes
Parang
po.
ganun.
The thing about sa ating country din, culturally, our country is very friendly. And because of that, we have a lot of treaties that we enjoy from other nations. Example, yung ating mga business treaties with the states, other countries will experience 10 to 15% of tax. Pero if we, like Pilipinas, we try to like get some abroad work, ang taxable natin is only 5%. So, ang laki ng difference. So, yun. So, marami po tayong opportunities, either employment or entrepreneurial. You can work for yourself eh. We can
Okay.
mhm.
In the past reports, ika-third ka, no? Ika-third ka ba? Ika-apat? Okay. We also discovered na most of the curricula doon sa ibang countries were focused on skills development. And if we try to, sabi natin, compare with the Philippines, sa atin marami tayong academics and we are motivated to higher education while in the other countries hindi sila. What could be the implication about dun sa skills development is more important than academic or academic is more important than skills in later life?
Yeah, that's yung sakit ng all three countries that I've discussed. We have placed a big value on the academics such that kung mataas ang iyong academic, mataas ang tingin sa iyo compared to skills. Pero right now, that's actually very detrimental sa atin because as the pandemic rages, nakita natin how much skills are talagang important right now. The reason why Vietnam right now is investing in so much vocational schools and integrating these vocational schools into their high school is because of that. They need skilled labor compared to just academics. Because usually, if you are very high in academics, you become the manager. Pero sinong nasa ilalim mo? So they needed holistic. That's the reason why ganyan din ang Korea right now. Masyado silang overeducated. If you have the means to go abroad, mag-abroad ka na lang. Because if you stay in the country, your options are to work for the government or to get an underemployed job, just to get a job.
You also mentioned in your reports that in, I think, Korea or Vietnam, the teachers were more respected and second to kingship.
Yes, that
If
is
you
true
try,
for both.
if you try to relate it to the Philippines, which means they give merits to educational status. If you compare
Yes.
it with the Philippines,
Both kasi
where does the
Korea and
Philippine give more value?
uh not definitely not in the teachers. But that's personal observation. For the two, because historically that has been their practice na talagang highly respected ang pagiging teacher. Sa atin kasi pre-colonial, hindi ganun yung ating history eh. Pre-colonial, our history was if you are tribal, it's usually the elders of the tribe who will teach the younger of the tribe, kind of like the pre-colonial in Africa. And pagdating ng colonial, as I said, iba yung kanilang approach. So, iba yung ating, compared to the other two, iba yung tingin natin sa teachers. We see the teachers as a necessity, but, because you want to pass. So
We
there,
are not what? We are servants
we are
in the
servants,
Philippines.
public servant.
We are public servants in the Philippines, but we are
Yes.
not second ranking official in the country.
Nope.
Okay. Ang observation ko ito sa report. Okay, this is
No.
my final
Sige po.
observation. In terms of yung academic development at saka ang virtue. You mentioned na they give more sa development, academic preparation. Ang virtue parang secondary. Now, in terms of, sabihin nating preference, where does the Philippines beside the virtue development or the value development or academic development compared to the other side of reports mo, which they give more
Values-wise, wala.
preference to academic?
Values-wise, wala tayo. I mean, because GMRC, doon mo malalaman yung values. That subject has become, ano na lang po eh, um, hindi lahat ng schools have that. So that's been taken out of the curricula. Um, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned it last week when you told me if you have passion, then you're going to have to integrate history and culture into our lesson. So history and culture tinanggal na din. So now we don't have enough placement on our values, cultural values, moral values na wala compared to the other two who still retain that. Tayo na wala doon. Ang pinaka-focus na lang I think ng DepEd is talagang academic, academic, academic with a little bit of skills kasi di ba K
Now,
to 12 is for that.
if you were given the chance to be the top manager,
I will place a
now if you
value
were
on all
given the
three.
chance to become
Dapat
the top
even po.
manager, what would you teach?
Kailangan po all three are equal eh. Your values, your skills, and your academics. Your academics para globally competitive tayo. Skills-wise para employable tayo. Pero your values, that's EQ and AQ. Kung mababa ang EQ and AQ mo, which I feel like pababa ng pababa yung EQ and AQ ng ating mga students, wala din eh. Hindi rin sila maging, kumbaga, if they get employed, they will not stay employed because they don't have the values that they will hone since childhood to become a better and proper citizen.
The greatest learning that you learned from your report.
We need to place more values on our teacher. But they cannot teach your moral values for you. We have to value them by making sure they are not overworked and underpaid.
And before you knew it, what you're doing actually is part of the curriculum. That is part of the curriculum which is called the hidden curriculum. The life that you live in front of them,
Curriculum.
it is not written, but it is observed. And that what they observe, they learn more than what they read.
Yes.
Thank you,
po.
Mai.
Thank you po. Doc, are we at the end
Okay,
of the
Isabel.
report po? Kasi I have to go. PTC po namin sa kabila. Parent-teacher conference.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you po,
Ano
Doc.
bang oras nyo?
Actually, kanina pa siya nag-start sa amin, but, I'm just jumping.
Bakit ganun? Di ba 1 to 4 kayo sa klasiko?
Ay, hindi, po, sa school po namin, may parent-teacher conference. Just me po.
Okay. Sige.
Just
It's okay.
today.
It's okay.
Thank you, Doc.
Any more